On a chilly evening, Emily walked home from her long shift at the small bakery where she worked. The sky was already dark, and the streets were quiet. As she passed the corner near her house, she noticed a man sitting alone on the sidewalk. His clothes were old, worn out, and covered with dust. He had no bag, no warm coat, and nothing but a thin blanket wrapped around him. Emily paused for a moment, feeling her heart tighten. Many people in her neighborhood walked past him without even looking, but Emily could not ignore him. She had always been a kind and gentle soul. Her mother had raised her to believe that kindness was the only thing that truly stayed in the world. Even though Emily herself did not have much money, she barely managed to pay her rent and keep her old car running. She could never turn away from someone in need. Still, she hesitated. She worried for her safety. She worried what others might say if they saw her helping a stranger. But then, she looked again at the man. His shoulders were hunched, and his hands trembled as if the cold air was cutting into his skin. Emily finally took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. The man lifted his head slowly. His face looked tired, with lines of exhaustion, but his eyes carried something gentle, something that made Emily feel he was not dangerous. He gave her a faint smile and nodded. "I'll be fine," he whispered, though his voice was hoarse. Emily knew he was not fine. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" she asked. The man shook his head. "I'll just stay here. I don't want to bother anyone," he said. His tone was calm, polite, and almost too respectful. Emily found herself surprised. Most people she had met who were desperate on the streets often sounded bitter or broken. This man sounded different, almost like someone who had lived another life before this. Her heart argued with her fear. She wanted to help, but she was also aware of the risks of inviting a stranger near her home. Still, something deep inside told her she could trust him. She thought for a moment and then made a decision she never expected to make. "Look," she said gently, "it's really cold tonight. You can't sleep out here. I have a garage at my house. It's not much, but it's safe and warmer than the street. You can stay there for the night if you want." The man blinked in surprise. He seemed almost shocked by her offer. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "I don't want to cause you any trouble." Emily gave a small smile. "It's okay. Just for one night. You'll be safe there." He stood up slowly, gratefulness shining in his eyes. thank you so much," he said. His voice cracked as if he had not spoken kind words in a long time. He followed Emily as she led him down the street to her modest home. Her garage was not fancy. It was just a small space with old boxes stacked in one corner, a bicycle leaning against the wall, and a thin carpet spread across the floor. It wasn't warm, but it was much better than the open street. Emily quickly found an extra blanket and a pillow and handed them to him. "It's not much," she said softly, "but at least you'll be more comfortable here." The man looked at the blanket and pillow like they were treasures. "This is more than enough," he replied with sincerity. He sat down on the carpet and gently placed the pillow under his head. Emily noticed that even though his clothes were ragged, the way he moved was graceful. There was something unusual about him, something she could not place. She wanted to ask his name, but she felt it might be too forward. So she simply said, "Good night. Rest well." Before she left the garage, she heard him whisper, "You're an angel." Those words stayed with Emily as she lay in bed later that night. She stared at her ceiling, thinking about what had just happened. She had let a stranger into her home, something most people would never do. Was she foolish? Or had she done the right thing? A part of her was afraid, but another part felt peaceful. She trusted her instincts, and they told her she had done something good. Meanwhile, in the garage, the man lay under the blanket, wide awake. His mind traveled back to the days when his life was very different. He remembered the nights when he had slept in hotels, in fine houses, and even on private jets. He had once been surrounded by wealth, power, and people who claimed to care about him. But in the end, those same people had betrayed him. He had walked away from it all, choosing to disappear, to see the world without his name or his money. And now, here he was, sleeping in the garage of a woman who did not even know his past. As the hours passed, both Emily and the man drifted into sleep, she with a heart full of kindness, and he with thoughts of how fate had led him to this small act of compassion. Neither of them knew that this single night would change their lives forever. The morning sun crept slowly over the neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of gold and soft pink. Emily stretched in her small bed, still feeling the uneasiness of the night before. She had done something unusual, something people around her would surely call foolish. She had let a stranger into her home. As she rubbed her eyes and sat up, her thoughts went immediately to the garage. Was he still there? Had he left in the middle of the night? Had he taken anything? Her heart pounded with both worry and curiosity. She wrapped herself in her robe and stepped quietly into the hallway. Her house was silent except for the faint creak of wood under her feet. With slow steps, she reached the garage door and placed her hand on the handle. She hesitated for a moment, almost afraid of what she might find. Finally, she turned the handle and pulled the door open. Inside, the man was still there. He was sitting on the thin carpet, the blanket folded neatly beside him, and he looked as though he had been waiting for her. When he saw her, he smiled politely and stood up right away. "Good morning," he said softly. His voice was calm, steady, and unexpectedly warm. Emily let out a breath of relief. "Good morning," she replied. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." The man lowered his gaze slightly, as if ashamed. "I promised I'd leave in the morning," he said, "and I keep my promises. I don't want to trouble you." Emily noticed the way he spoke. His words were clear, polite, and respectful, unlike the hurried, rough voices she often heard from people struggling on the streets. There was something different about him. She couldn't explain it, but every little detail seemed unusual. "You're not troubling me," Emily said gently. "But before you go, let me at least give you something to eat." She went into her small kitchen and began preparing a simple breakfast: eggs, toast, and a cup of hot coffee. The smell filled the air as she worked, and she thought about how strange her morning was. Usually, she ate alone, staring out the window while preparing herself for another long shift at the bakery. Today, however, she was preparing food for someone she didn't even know. When she brought the plate into the garage, the man's eyes widened. "You made this, for me?" he asked, almost as if he couldn't believe it. Emily nodded. "Of course. You need a good meal to start the day." He accepted the plate with careful hands, as though it was something precious. Before taking a bite, he looked at her and said, "I can't remember the last time someone did something like this for me." His voice was low, almost breaking. Emily sat down on a small stool nearby. She didn't want to ask too many questions, but her curiosity was growing stronger. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The man paused for a moment, then replied, "Daniel." It was a simple name, but it carried weight, as if there was a story hidden behind it. Emily smiled. "Nice to meet you, Daniel." "I'm Emily." He nodded politely. "Nice to meet you too, Emily. Thank you for trusting me." They sat in silence for a while as he ate. Emily observed him quietly. Even though his clothes were worn, his manner was calm and disciplined. He chewed slowly, sat upright, and even thanked her after every bite. She found it unusual but didn't press him for details. She didn't want to make him uncomfortable. After finishing, Daniel carefully placed the empty plate back in her hands. "This was wonderful. I'll never forget it," he said. Then, to her surprise, he added, Before I leave, is there anything I can do for you? Something I can fix or carry? I don't like to take without giving back. Emily was taken aback by his offer. Most people in his situation would simply take what they could and leave. But Daniel was different. There's nothing, really, she said. You don't have to, he interrupted gently. Please. It would mean a lot to me. Reluctantly, Emily thought about the small things in her home that had been bothering her. The light in the hallway flickered constantly, and the handle on the back door was loose. She pointed them out, thinking he might not know how to fix them. But Daniel surprised her again. With skillful hands, he examined the light, adjusted the wires carefully, and had it working perfectly within minutes. Then he tightened the handle on the door, making it firm again. Emily stood there, stunned. How do you know how to do all this?" she asked. Daniel smiled faintly, as if hiding something. "I picked up a lot of things over the years," he said simply. For the rest of the morning, he helped her with small tasks around the house, sweeping the porch, fixing a squeaky hinge, and even advising her when she mentioned how hard it was to manage her bills. He spoke with such knowledge and confidence, offering simple, practical ideas about saving money and handling expenses. Emily listened carefully, amazed by his insight. When it was finally time for him to go, Daniel stood at the edge of her driveway. "Thank you for your kindness," he said. "Not everyone would have done what you did." Emily smiled softly. "Take care of yourself, Daniel." He looked at her with an expression she could not quite understand. It was as though he wanted to say more, but he held back. Then he nodded and walked away down the quiet street. As Emily watched him disappear into the distance, she felt something stir inside her. This man was not what he seemed. There was a mystery about him, something hidden beneath the worn clothes and quiet manner. She didn't know what it was, but she knew deep in her heart that this was not the last time she would see him. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily thought about everything that had happened. The sound of his voice, the careful way he fixed things, the wisdom in his words, all of it played in her mind. Who exactly was Daniel? Why did he seem so different from others she had met on the streets? She could not answer these questions, but she knew one thing for sure: one small act of kindness had opened a door to something far bigger than she could ever imagine. And while she didn't realize it yet, Daniel was already thinking of her as the person who reminded him that true kindness still existed in the world. The next few days passed quietly for Emily, but her thoughts were never far from the stranger she had met. She kept seeing Daniel's face in her mind, the calmness in his eyes, the gentleness in his voice, and the unusual knowledge he carried. She told herself she might never see him again, yet a part of her hoped their paths would cross once more. Life carried on as usual. She woke early every morning, walked to the bakery, spent hours serving customers with a smile, and returned home late in the evening. But something had changed inside her. Ever since Daniel stayed in her garage, she felt a different kind of warmth, a reminder that simple acts of kindness mattered. One rainy afternoon, as Emily struggled to carry groceries from her car, she noticed a figure standing near her gate. At first, she thought it was one of her neighbors, but as she came closer, she realized it was Daniel. His clothes were still plain and worn, but his face lit up when he saw her. "You came back," she said with surprise, almost dropping her bags. "I couldn't leave without thanking you properly," he replied, rushing forward to help her with the heavy bags. His voice carried gratitude, but also something deeper, as though he was relieved to see her again. Emily led him inside, and they shared tea at her small kitchen table while the rain tapped gently on the windows. They talked about simple things at first: the weather, the bakery, her day at work. But soon, the conversation shifted. Emily mentioned how her roof leaked every time it rained heavily, and without hesitation, Daniel offered to check it. She wanted to refuse, not wanting to trouble him, but his persistence won. That afternoon, Daniel climbed up onto her roof, and to Emily's amazement, he fixed the broken tiles with ease. He moved with confidence, like someone who had done this many times before. When he came down, soaked from the rain but smiling, Emily handed him a towel and asked again, "How do you know all these things?" He chuckled softly. "Let's just say I've lived many lives." Emily was curious but respected his silence. She sensed that he had secrets, but she didn't press him. Instead, she focused on the kindness he showed, which reminded her of the kind of people the world often forgot. As days turned into a week, Daniel began visiting more often. Sometimes he appeared in the mornings, sweeping her driveway or trimming the bushes. Other times, he came in the evening, offering to help fix small things in her home. Emily noticed he never asked for money, never complained, and never demanded anything in return. His only wish seemed to be giving back for the one night she had offered him shelter. Emily's neighbors began to notice his presence. Some whispered behind her back, warning her not to trust a homeless man. "He'll take advantage of you," one neighbor muttered. "You're too soft-hearted." Emily heard their gossip but ignored it. Something inside her told her Daniel was different. One evening, Emily sat at her table, frowning at her bills. The bakery job paid little, and she struggled every month to keep up with rent and expenses. Daniel, who had just finished fixing the old lock on her back door, noticed her worried expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Emily hesitated but then sighed. "It's nothing. Just bills. I always manage somehow." Daniel leaned closer. "May I take a look?" She slid the papers toward him, and he studied them carefully. His eyes moved quickly, and he began pointing out details: expenses she could cut down, ways she could save money, and even opportunities to invest a little instead of spending everything at once. Emily stared at him in disbelief. "How do you know all this? You talk like a banker or a businessman." Daniel smiled faintly. "Once upon a time, I used to deal with numbers a lot. Old habits never leave you." Though he didn't explain further, Emily could sense there was truth in his words. His knowledge was too sharp to come from guesswork. She thanked him sincerely, realizing his advice could actually help her manage her life better. Over the following days, Daniel's presence grew into something Emily looked forward to. She realized he wasn't just fixing her home, he was bringing comfort and peace into her life. She had been lonely for years, living quietly with no family nearby. But with Daniel around, the house felt alive. He told her small stories about places he had traveled, about books he had read long ago, about lessons he had learned through hardship. His words carried wisdom, the kind that came only from a life filled with both joy and sorrow. One afternoon, Emily offered him a warm meal again, and as they ate together, she noticed the way he held the fork, the way he sat upright, the way he used polite manners without even thinking. These were not habits of someone who had spent years on the streets. They were the habits of someone raised in refinement. Her curiosity grew stronger, but still she held back. Instead, she simply said, "You know, Daniel, you don't seem like a man who belongs on the streets." For a moment, his eyes darkened, as if a shadow from the past had crossed his mind. Then he replied softly, "Appearances can deceive. Sometimes life takes us places we never thought we'd go." Emily nodded. She understood, even if she didn't know the full story. That night, after Daniel left, Emily sat on her porch, watching the stars. She realized how much he had already changed her life in such a short time. He had reminded her that kindness was never wasted. She thought back to the night she had found him shivering on the street. If she had walked past like everyone else, she would never have discovered the man behind the ragged clothes. Daniel, too, walked away with his mind full of thoughts. He admired Emily's kindness, not because of the shelter or food she had given, but because she treated him like a human being when the world had turned its back. And though he had kept his secret buried, he knew the day was coming when she would learn the truth. For now, he simply wanted to enjoy these moments, the simple joy of friendship, the warmth of her home, and the reminder that real compassion still existed. As the days grew brighter and their bond grew stronger, neither Emily nor Daniel realized they were standing on the edge of a life-changing revelation. Fate had tied their lives together, and soon, the world Emily thought she knew would be shaken by the truth hidden behind Daniel's quiet eyes. The morning started like any other for Emily. She was in her small kitchen preparing a pot of coffee when she heard the sound of a car outside. At first, she thought it might be one of her neighbors or the mailman. But when she looked out the window, her eyes widened. A long, black luxury car had stopped in front of her modest house. The vehicle was polished to perfection, shining under the sun, and its tinted windows gave off an air of importance. Emily froze, wondering what such a car was doing in her quiet street. She wiped her hands nervously on her apron and stepped onto the porch. The car door opened slowly, and two men in tailored suits stepped out. Their shoes were spotless, their posture straight, and their expression serious. They didn't look like ordinary visitors. They looked like people who were used to power. Emily's heart began to race. She glanced down the street, half expecting Daniel to appear, but he wasn't there. One of the men approached her politely. "Good morning, ma'am," he said in a firm but respectful tone. "We're looking for someone. His name is Daniel. Have you seen him?" Emily blinked in surprise, her mind rushing. Why would men in expensive suits come looking for Daniel? She tried to stay calm. "Yes," she admitted slowly. "He's been around here." "Why are you asking?" The men exchanged a quick glance, and the one who had spoken nodded. "We've been searching for him for a long time. He's important." Before Emily could ask further, another door of the car opened. A man stepped out, older, with sharp features and a commanding presence. He carried himself with confidence, and Emily could instantly tell he was someone of authority. He looked around, scanning the neighborhood until his eyes fell on Emily. "So this is where he's been," the man said, more to himself than to her. Emily felt her palms grow sweaty. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could sense that everything she thought she knew about Daniel was about to change. Almost on cue, Daniel appeared at the end of the street. He was walking calmly toward the house, carrying a small bag of groceries he had picked up for Emily. The moment he saw the luxury car and the men in suits, he stopped in his tracks. For a second, his expression hardened, as though he had been caught in a situation he had been avoiding. Emily called out, "Daniel." Her voice carried both relief and confusion. Daniel sighed softly and walked forward, his face calm but his eyes watchful. When he reached the porch, the men in suits straightened, almost as if they were standing before someone they respected. Emily noticed the sudden change in their body language, and her confusion deepened. The older man stepped forward. "Mr. Daniels," he said formally, "we've been looking for you everywhere." Emily's head snapped toward Daniel. "Mr. Daniels?" She stared at him, trying to process the words. Daniel gave a tired smile. "I asked you not to call me that," he said firmly. "I left that life behind." Emily's heart pounded. She looked at him in disbelief. "What is going on, Daniel?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel turned toward her, his eyes soft. "Emily. I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how. The truth is, I'm not who you think I am. I wasn't always homeless. I wasn't always lost. I used to be someone else." Emily shook her head, confused. "What do you mean?" The older man interrupted, his tone respectful but insistent. "This man is not just Daniel. He is Daniel Harrison, the millionaire businessman who disappeared years ago. People thought he had vanished for good. But here he is, alive and well." Emily felt her breath catch. Millionaire. She looked at Daniel, waiting for him to deny it, but he didn't. Instead, he lowered his gaze, almost ashamed. Yes, Daniel admitted quietly. It's true. I once had wealth, businesses, and power. I had everything money could buy. But I lost faith in people. Too many betrayed me, too many only wanted me for what I could give them. So I walked away. I disappeared. I chose to live among those who had nothing, to see the world with my own eyes. And that's how you found me. Emily's knees felt weak, and she gripped the porch railing to steady herself. Her mind raced back to all the times she had seen him fix things, the way he spoke with wisdom, the way he carried himself with dignity. Suddenly, it all made sense. But, why didn't you tell me? She asked softly. Daniel looked at her with honesty. Because I wanted to know if someone could care for me without knowing my wealth. I needed to believe that kindness still existed, that people could see me as a human being and not a bank account. And then you came along, Emily. You gave me a blanket. You gave me shelter. You gave me dignity. You didn't even know who I was, and yet you treated me like a friend. That meant more to me than all the riches I ever had. Tears filled Emily's eyes. She didn't know what to say. The man she thought was a poor stranger was, in truth, a man who could have anything in the world. And yet, he chose to sleep in her garage, to share simple meals at her table, to live quietly when he could have lived in luxury. The older man stepped closer. Sir, it's time to come back. The world believes you're gone, but you're needed. Your companies, your people, they need your leadership. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. I'm not ready. And besides, he glanced at Emily, I've found something here worth more than all the boardrooms and offices. Emily's heart fluttered. She wasn't sure what he meant, but the look in his eyes was unmistakable. He valued her kindness, her presence, her friendship, in a way that no amount of money could replace. The men in suits seemed unsettled but didn't argue further. They stepped back respectfully, waiting for his decision. Emily finally found her voice. Daniel, I don't care about the money or the millionaire part. I only know the man who helped me fix my home, who made me laugh, who reminded me of the importance of kindness. That's who you are to me. Daniel smiled, a smile full of relief and gratitude. And that's why I stayed, Emily. Because you saw me, not my fortune. The luxury car waited silently by the curb, but for Emily and Daniel, the world around them faded. In that moment, it wasn't about wealth or secrets. It was about trust, compassion, and the bond that had grown between two unlikely souls. As the evening sun began to set, Emily realized her life would never be the same again. The man she had once thought of as homeless was far more than she ever imagined. And yet, to her heart, he was simply Daniel, the man whose presence had already changed her world. What she didn't know was that this revelation was only the beginning. Daniel had more decisions to make, choices that would not only affect his life but hers as well. The truth was out now, and the future was about to take a turn neither of them could have predicted. Daniel stood on the porch, the cool breeze brushing against his face, his mind torn between two worlds. Behind him stood the men in suits, waiting for his decision, their polished shoes tapping against the concrete with quiet impatience. In front of him was Emily, the woman who had shown him kindness when the world had turned its back. For years, he had run away from his wealth, his name, and the responsibilities that came with it. Yet here he was, on the edge of a choice that would change not only his life but Emily's as well. The silence stretched between them until Emily finally spoke. Daniel. I don't care about who you were. I care about who you are now. And the man I know is kind, humble, and human. If you decide to go back to that old life, just remember that. Her words pierced through him. Daniel took a deep breath and turned to the older man in the suit. Tell them I'll return, he said firmly, but not without finishing something here first. The man gave a respectful nod, understanding there was no use pressing further. They left in the luxury car, promising to return soon. When the car drove away, Emily finally allowed herself to breathe again. She looked at Daniel, searching for answers. "So, what now?" Daniel gave her a soft smile. "Now, I thank you. And I make things right." Over the next few weeks, Daniel's life shifted in ways Emily could never have imagined. At first, she thought he might vanish completely, swept away by the world of wealth and power he once knew. But instead, he stayed close, visiting her every day, helping her as he had before. Only now, there was no hiding. He didn't speak much about his money, but Emily noticed small changes. One morning, she woke up to find her old, broken fence replaced with a brand new one. Another day, a delivery truck arrived with boxes full of groceries, enough to last her for months. At first, she tried to refuse, insisting she didn't need gifts. But Daniel looked at her with such sincerity that she couldn't argue. "This isn't charity," he told her gently. "This is gratitude. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. Let me return the kindness." But it wasn't just the gifts that surprised her. Daniel began quietly involving her in decisions that seemed bigger than she realized. He asked her opinion about investments, about how to help struggling families in the community, about ways to make life easier for those who had little. Emily didn't understand at first why her opinion mattered so much to him. One evening, she finally asked, "Daniel, why are you asking me all these things? I'm just an ordinary woman." His eyes softened as he replied, "Because ordinary people see the truth more clearly than those blinded by wealth. You saw me for who I was, not for what I owned. That's why your voice matters." Emily felt her cheeks warm, humbled by his words. Slowly, she began to see that Daniel wasn't just planning to return to his old life. He was planning to change it to build something better, something rooted in the kind of kindness she had shown him. Then, one bright morning, Daniel invited Emily to come with him to the city. He didn't explain why, only that it was important. Nervously, Emily agreed. When they arrived, she found herself standing in front of a towering glass building, its name carved into stone above the entrance, Harrison Enterprises. She stared in shock. This was his company. Inside, people in suits rushed to greet Daniel with respect and relief. Whispers spread quickly through the hallways, "He's back." After all these years, Emily felt out of place in her simple clothes, but Daniel never let go of her hand as he led her into the grand boardroom. In front of his board of directors, Daniel spoke with authority. "I may have left, but I never lost sight of what truly matters. From now on, this company will not just chase profit, it will serve people. We will invest in communities, in shelters, in small businesses. We will give back." His voice was steady, commanding, yet filled with passion. The directors looked shocked, some even uneasy, but no one dared challenge him. Emily watched in awe. This was the same man who had once slept in her garage, now standing as a leader with vision and strength. After the meeting, Daniel turned to Emily. "None of this would have happened without you," he said. "You reminded me of humanity. You gave me hope again." Emily shook her head. "All I did was offer a blanket and a place to sleep." Daniel smiled. "Sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life." In the weeks that followed, Daniel's promise came to life. Shelters were built, food programs launched, and opportunities opened for those struggling in poverty. But amid all the noise of business and success, he always returned to Emily's small home, where life was simple and peaceful. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Daniel sat with Emily on her porch. The air was quiet, filled only with the chirping of crickets. He turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. "Emily, you changed me. When I had nothing, you gave me everything that mattered. You showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. I don't want you to ever struggle again. Let me take care of you not because of money, but because you're the only person who saw me as a man, not a millionaire." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She didn't need riches or fame, she only wanted honesty and friendship. Yet in her heart, she knew that their lives had become forever intertwined. From that day forward, their bond grew stronger. Emily no longer saw Daniel as a homeless man or even as a millionaire. She saw him simply as Daniel, the man who had reminded her that one act of compassion could change the course of two lives. And Daniel, for all his wealth and power, never forgot the cold night when a simple woman opened her garage and gave him dignity. To him, that was worth more than every fortune he had ever built. Their story became a quiet truth in their small town. People whispered about the woman who had helped a homeless man, not knowing he was a millionaire. But Emily and Daniel never cared about the gossip. They knew the real story. It was not about money. It was about kindness, trust, and the unshakable bond between two souls who had found each other in the most unexpected way.